Did you know that in Illinois there was once a mine where, after a collapse in the early 20th century, the few survivors swore they heard voices and footsteps in the tunnels for days before being rescued, even though no one else was alive down there? That in the late 19th century, travelers avoided the swamps near Cairo because on many nights strange lights appeared over the water and figures dissolved into the fog without leaving a trace, and that there was a riverside town that ended up abandoned when the river began to eat away its houses one by one. Illinois isn't just skyscrapers, elevated trains, and cutting-edge architecture. It's also forgotten tragedies, vanished towns, and episodes that feel ripped from a novel. Get ready. Today you'll uncover 33 real and unsettling stories that will change the way you see a state where the ordinary coexists with the unbelievable. 33. The Heist of the Great Emancipator. In the year 1876, a group of bumbling counterfeiters hatched a plan so audacious it sounds like a tall tale. These men, led by a crime boss named James Keneally, sought to steal the body of Abraham Lincoln from his tomb in Springfield. Their goal was not some macabre collection, but a cold, hard ransom. They planned to trade the remains of the 16th president for the release of their master engraver from prison and a hefty sum of $200,000. On election night, they managed to break into the sarcophagus and partially pull out the lead-lined casket. However, they had unknowingly recruited a Secret Service informant into their ranks. The authorities were waiting in the shadows of the cemetery, and although the thieves initially escaped into the night, they were captured soon after, leaving Lincoln to rest in peace under several tons of protective concrete. 32. The Monster of the Mississippi Bluffs. Long before European explorers set foot on the soil of what we now call Alton, the indigenous peoples spoke of a terrifying creature known as the Piasa bird. This was no ordinary feathered friend. Descriptions from the 17th century characterize it as a monstrous beast with the face of a man, the scales of a fish, a long tail ending in a scorpion sting, and wings capable of blotting out the sun. In 1673, Father Jacques Marquette recorded seeing a massive painting of this creature high upon the limestone cliffs overlooking the river. Legend says the bird was a man-eater that terrorized local villages until a brave chief named Uatoga offered himself as bait to lure the beast into range of his warrior's arrows. To this day, a massive replica of the ancient painting watches over the river, reminding travelers of the ancient mysteries hidden within the Illinois bluffs. 31. The Labyrinth of the Englewood Pharmacist. During the bustle of the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, a charismatic man named Dr. Henry Howard Holmes operated a hotel in Chicago that the newspapers would later dub the Murder Castle. This three-story building was a maze of horror designed with a sinister purpose known only to Holmes himself. It contained over 100 rooms, some featuring soundproof walls, gas jets to asphyxiate unsuspecting guests, and trapdoors that led directly to a basement crematorium. Holmes was a master of deception, frequently hiring and firing contractors so that no single person would understand the full twisted layout of the structure. While he confessed to 27 murders, some investigators believe the true number of victims he lured into his labyrinth was significantly higher. Today, a post office stands on the site, yet the dark legacy of America's first notorious serial killer remains etched into the history of the city. Before continuing, be sure to subscribe and leave a like to keep discovering the strange and incredible history of our entire country. 30. The Legend of the Unlucky Bovine. The Great Chicago Fire of 1871 remains one of the most transformative events in American urban history, but its origin story is often clouded by a persistent myth. For decades, the blame was laid squarely at the hooves of a cow belonging to Catherine O'Leary. The story goes that the animal kicked over a lantern in a barn on DeKoven Street, sparking a blaze that would eventually consume 4 square miles and leave 100,000 people homeless. However, Catherine O'Leary always maintained her innocence, and modern historians believe the story was likely an invention of a journalist fueled by anti-immigrant sentiment. In fact, in 1997, the Chicago City Council officially exonerated the poor woman and her cow. While the fire was a tragedy of immense proportions, the resilience of the city allowed it to rise from the ashes like a phoenix, becoming a marvel of modern architecture. 29. The Phantom Vapor of Mattoon. In the late summer of 1944, the residents of Mattoon found themselves gripped by a strange and terrifying phenomenon. It began when a woman reported a sweet, sickly odor entering her bedroom window, followed by a sudden paralysis of her legs and a fit of nausea. Over the next 2 weeks, more than 24 people reported similar attacks by an entity they called the Mad Gasser. Victims described seeing a tall, thin figure in dark clothing lurking in the shadows outside their homes. While the police and local authorities eventually dismissed the entire episode as a case of mass hysteria fueled by the anxieties of World War II, some researchers believe there may have been a real culprit. One theory points to a local eccentric with a knowledge of chemistry who might have been experimenting with toxic vapors, leaving the town forever wary of a mysterious scent on the breeze. 28. The Vanishing Passenger of Archer Avenue. If you find yourself driving down Archer Avenue on a lonely night near Justice, you might encounter the most famous ghost in the Midwest. Known as Resurrection Mary, this legend dates back to the 1930s. Young men would often report picking up a beautiful, quiet girl dressed in a white party dress and dancing shoes near the Willowbrook Ballroom. She would ask for a ride north, but as the car approached the gates of Resurrection Cemetery, she would vanish into thin air, sometimes leaving behind nothing but the scent of cold air or scorch marks on the cemetery's wrought iron fence. Some believe she is the spirit of a girl named Mary Bregovy or Anna Norkus, both of whom died in tragic car accidents during the era of jazz and swing. Whether she is a memory or a manifestation, Mary remains a haunting symbol of a life cut short in the Windy City. 27. The Italian Replica in the Suburbs. In the village of Niles, one might be startled to find a massive leaning structure that looks exactly like the famous landmark in Pisa, Italy. Completed in 1934, the Leaning Tower of Niles is a half-sized replica of its European cousin. It was commissioned by an industrialist named Robert Ilg as part of a recreation park for his employees. While it serves as a beautiful piece of architecture, the tower actually had a very practical purpose. It was built to hide a large steel water tank that supplied the park's swimming pools. The tower stands 94 feet tall and tilts at an angle of 7 feet. It even contains several bells cast in Italy during the 17th and 18th centuries, though how they arrived in Illinois remains a bit of a mystery. In 1991, Niles and Pisa officially became sister cities, forever linking this suburban curiosity to the original marble masterpiece. 26. The Bermuda Triangle of the Great Lakes. Many have heard of the mysteries in the Atlantic, but Lake Michigan holds its own stretch of water where ships and planes seem to vanish without a trace. This area, known as the Lake Michigan Triangle, stretches between Ludington, Benton Harbor, and Manitowoc. One of the most perplexing tales is that of Captain George Donner of the ship McFarland. In 1937, after hours of navigating through heavy ice, the captain retired to his cabin for some much-needed rest. When his crew went to wake him as they neared port, they found the cabin door locked from the inside. Upon breaking it down, they discovered the room was empty. The captain had disappeared from a locked room on a moving ship in the middle of the lake. From strange lights to the vanishing of Northwest Airlines Flight 2501 in 1950, the triangle continues to baffle those who sail its deep, cold waters. 25. The engineering answer to the Eiffel Tower. When Chicago was selected to host the world's Columbian Exposition, the organizers wanted an attraction that would rival the Eiffel Tower of the Paris Exposition. The answer came from a young engineer named George Washington Gale Ferris. He proposed a massive rotating wheel that would carry passengers high above the fairgrounds. Many doubted the project was even possible, calling it a death trap, but Ferris persisted. When it opened in June of 1893, the wheel was a mechanical marvel. It stood 250 feet tall and featured 36 cars, each the size of a city bus and capable of holding 60 people. It was powered by 2 massive steam engines and provided a view of the city that had never been seen before. Though the original wheel was eventually sold for scrap, the name of its inventor became synonymous with amusement park rides across the entire world, all starting right here in Illinois. 24. The capital that crossed the river. Kaskaskia was once the bustling hub of the Illinois Territory, and even served as the state's first capital starting in 1818. It was a thriving river town with thousands of residents, situated on a peninsula between the Kaskaskia and Mississippi rivers. However, the mighty Mississippi is a restless neighbor. In the spring of 1881, massive flooding caused the river to cut a new channel, effectively wiping out the original town site and turning the remains of Kaskaskia into an island. Over time, the river's shift moved the town to to the western side of the main current. Because state boundaries are often fixed to historical river paths, this small piece of Illinois now sits geographically within the state of Missouri. To visit this historic site today, you must travel through Missouri and cross a small bridge, finding a quiet village that serves as a ghostly reminder of the state's earliest days of power. 23. The heroism beneath the Cherry soil. On a cold November day in 1909, the town of Cherry was the site of the third deadliest coal mine disaster in United States history. A fire started in the stables of the St. Paul Coal Company mine when hay for the mules came into contact with a kerosene torch. The fire quickly spread, trapping hundreds of men and boys in the tunnels below. While 259 lives were lost, the event is also remembered for an incredible feat of survival. A group of 21 miners, led by George Eddy and Walter Waite, managed to wall themselves off in a remote section of the mine to escape the toxic fumes. They survived for 8 harrowing days in total darkness, drinking water that seeped from the walls, until they were miraculously rescued. Their survival led to significant changes in mining safety laws and the establishment of the first workmen's compensation acts in the state. 22. The porcelain residents of Richland County. In the quiet town of Olney, nestled within Richland County, you might find yourself rubbing your eyes in disbelief as a flash of snowy white fur scurries across the road. This is no ordinary neighborhood. Olney is the self-proclaimed white squirrel capital of the world. These are not mere strays, but a protected population of hundreds of albino squirrels that have called the town home for over a century. Local laws are so strict that these fluffy residents have the right of way on all streets, and harming one can lead to a hefty fine of $750. Legend says they appeared after a local resident released a pair of white squirrels he had captured, and they flourished in the gentle environment. Today, the town even holds an annual squirrel count to ensure their porcelain-colored icons are thriving and well-fed. 21. The dark echoes of the salt works. Deep in the southern reaches of Gallatin County stands a grand Greek Revival mansion known as the Crenshaw House, or more chillingly, the Old Slave House. Built in 1838 by John Crenshaw, this structure hides a dark and paradoxical history. While Illinois was technically a free state, Crenshaw utilized a legal loophole involving the local salt works to keep enslaved people in cruel conditions. The third floor of the house was a cramped, dark attic filled with small cells, where he reportedly kept kidnapped free black individuals before selling them back into the southern slave trade. This grim operation is often called the Reverse Underground Railroad. Today, the house stands as a somber monument to a time when the lines between freedom and bondage were blurred by greed, reminding us that the struggle for human rights has many forgotten battlegrounds within the prairie state. 20. The heroic sentinel of the Ohio River. If you travel to the very tip of the state where the Ohio River flows, you will find the town of Metropolis. In 1972, the Illinois State Legislature officially declared this charming community the hometown of Superman. The town has fully embraced its heroic identity, featuring a 15-foot-tall bronze statue of the Man of Steel that stands proudly in the center of the town square. Visitors can also visit a museum dedicated to the character, containing thousands of pieces of memorabilia from comics and films. Even the local newspaper is appropriately named the Metropolis Planet, a nod to the fictional publication where Clark Kent worked. Each June, thousands of fans descend upon the town for the Superman celebration, proving that while the hero might be a fictional creation of ink and paper, his spirit of truth and justice is very real in southern Illinois. 19. The Curse of the Displaced Goat. For 71 long years, a shadow hung over the north side of Chicago, specifically over the hallowed grounds of Wrigley Field. The legend of the Billy Goat curse began during the 1945 World Series when William Cianis, owner of the Billy Goat Tavern, tried to bring his pet goat, Murphy, into the stadium. Despite having a ticket for the animal, they were ejected because the goat smelled. Enraged, Cianis allegedly proclaimed that the Cubs would never win another World Series. For decades, this prophecy seemed unbreakable, as the team suffered through historic collapses and heartbreaking losses that defied logic. Fans tried everything to break the hex, from bringing other goats to the field to hiring priests for blessings. Finally, in 2016, the curse was shattered in a thrilling Game 7 victory, proving that even the most stubborn spirits eventually yield to time. 18. The Stone Fortress of the Mississippi. Standing near the banks of the Mississippi River in Randolph County, Fort Deschartres offers a tangible link to the era when France claimed the heart of the American continent. Built in the early 18th century, this massive stone fortress was the seat of French government in the Illinois country. Its thick walls and impressive gatehouse were designed to project power and protect the lucrative fur trade. However, the river proved to be a more formidable foe than any army. Flooding eventually forced the French to abandon the site, and the British later destroyed much of the walls. Today, a meticulously reconstructed section of the fort, including the original stone powder magazine, which is the oldest building in the state, allows visitors to step back into a time of muskets and silk waistcoats. It remains a silent sentinel of a vanished empire that once dreamed of prairie glory. 17. The secret sanctuary of Princeton. In the town of Princeton, a modest brick home once served as a beacon of hope for those fleeing the chains of slavery. This was the homestead of Owen Lovejoy, a fiery preacher and politician who was one of the most prominent abolitionists in the nation. Lovejoy turned his home into a vital station on the Underground Railroad, hiding runaway slaves in a secret compartment beneath the floorboards. His commitment to the cause was deeply personal. He had witnessed his brother Elijah being murdered by a pro-slavery mob in Alton just years prior. Despite the constant threat of legal action and violence, Lovejoy and his family helped hundreds of people find their way to freedom in the North. Today, the home is a National Historic Landmark, preserving the memory of a man who believed that the moral compass of the state must always point toward liberty for all. 16. The tragedy of Haymarket Square. The streets of Chicago in May of 1886 were a tinderbox of labor unrest and social tension. Workers were demanding an 8-hour workday, a concept that seems standard now, but was radical at the time. During a peaceful rally at Haymarket Square, a dynamite bomb was thrown into the ranks of the police, sparking a chaotic exchange of gunfire. 7 police officers and at least 4 civilians were killed in the ensuing violence. The event led to a controversial trial and the execution of several labor activists, who many believe were convicted more for their political beliefs than for any direct link to the bombing. The Haymarket affair became a pivotal moment in the global labor movement, leading to the establishment of May Day as an international holiday for workers. It serves as a stark reminder of the high price paid for the rights we enjoy today. 15. The vanished splendor of Nauvoo. On the banks of the Mississippi River sits the town of Nauvoo, which for a brief period in the 1840s was the largest city in Illinois, even rivaling Chicago in size and influence. It was founded by Joseph Smith and his followers after they were expelled from Missouri. The settlers transformed a swampy bend in the river into a beautiful city of brick homes and a magnificent stone temple. However, tensions quickly rose between the newcomers and the local residents over political power and religious practices. This friction culminated in the murder of Joseph Smith in 1844. Fearing further violence, the majority of the population, led by Brigham Young, abandoned their beautiful city in the winter of 1846. They began a grueling trek westward that would eventually lead them to the Great Salt Lake, leaving Nauvoo to become a quiet, historic ghost of its former self. 14. The silent role of the Eastland. While many remember the Titanic, fewer recall the tragedy of the Eastland, which occurred right in the heart of downtown Chicago in 1915. On a breezy July morning, the steamship was docked at the Clark Street Bridge, packed with over 2,500 employees from the Western Electric Company who were heading to a summer picnic. As the ship prepared to depart, it suddenly began to list toward the river. Within minutes, the vessel rolled completely onto its side in the shallow water. Because the ship had been outfitted with extra lifeboats following the Titanic disaster, it had become top-heavy and unstable. 844 people lost their lives, many trapped beneath the decks or crushed by heavy furniture. It remains the deadliest maritime disaster in the history of the Great Lakes, a chilling reminder that danger can lurk even within the safety of a city harbor. 13. The final stand of the Sauk. In 1832, the peaceful prairies of northern Illinois became a battlefield during the Black Hawk War. A leader of the Sauk Nation named Black Hawk led a group of about 1,000 people, including women and children, back across the Mississippi River to reclaim their ancestral lands. They had been pressured into signing away their territory years before and sought only to plant corn and live in peace. However, the arrival of the British Band, as they were called, sparked panic among the white settlers and the military. A young Abraham Lincoln even served as a volunteer in the militia during this conflict, though he famously joked that his only battles were with mosquitoes. The war ended tragically at the Battle of Bad Axe, where many of Black Hawk's followers were killed. This conflict marked the final major indigenous resistance to westward expansion within the borders of Illinois. 12. The terror of the tampered capsules. In the autumn of 1982, a wave of terror swept through the Chicago suburbs after 7 people died unexpectedly after taking over-the-counter pain medication. Investigators soon discovered that the bottles of Tylenol had been laced with deadly potassium cyanide. The randomness of the killings caused a nationwide panic, leading to the immediate recall of 31 million bottles of the product. Store shelves were cleared, and people were warned to throw away any capsules they had at home. While the perpetrator of this horrific crime was never caught, the event fundamentally changed the way we interact with medicine. It led directly to the invention of tamper-evident packaging, such as foil seals and plastic wraps, which are now standard on almost every consumer product. The mystery of the Tylenol murders remains one of the most chilling cold cases in the history of the state and the nation. 11. The last public hanging. In 1928, the town of Benton became the site of a grim milestone in the history of the prairie. This was the year of the final public execution in Illinois, involving a man named Charlie Birger. Birger was a notorious bootlegger and the leader of a violent gang that had spent years warring with the rival Shelton brothers and the Ku Klux Klan for control of the local underworld. His criminal empire was built on illegal alcohol and ruthless intimidation during the Prohibition era. When he was finally brought to justice for the murder of a local mayor, a crowd of thousands gathered to witness his end. Despite his violent life, Birger famously faced the gallows with a smile, reportedly telling the crowd that it was a beautiful world before the trapdoor opened. His death marked the end of the bloody gang wars of Southern Illinois. Before moving on to story number 10, remember to subscribe and like to become an expert on the history of our wonderful country. 10. The Enfield Horror. In 1973, a bizarre series of events in the small town of Enfield left residents locking their doors in fear. It began when a young boy reported being attacked by a strange three-legged creature with glowing red eyes and claws. When a local man named Henry McDaniel investigated a scratching sound at his door later that night, he encountered the same beast. He described it as about 4 feet tall, gray-colored, and hopping like a kangaroo but with the face of a man. McDaniel even fired several shots at the intruder, but the creature reportedly hissed and leaped away, covering 40 feet in a single bound. While some skeptics suggested the creature was an escaped ape or a trick of the light, the Enfield Horror remains one of the most famous and unexplained cryptid sightings in the history of the Illinois countryside. 9. The Gentle Giant of Alton. Standing as a monument to the extraordinary diversity of the human form, Robert Wadlow remains the tallest person in recorded history. Born in Alton in 1918, Wadlow weighed a normal 8 pounds at birth, but began to grow at an incredible rate due to a hyperactive pituitary gland. By the age of 8, he was taller than his father, and by the time he reached adulthood, he stood a staggering 8 feet and 11 inches tall. Despite his imposing size, he was known throughout his community and the world as a gentle and kind-hearted man. He traveled the country as a spokesperson for a shoe company, requiring custom footwear that cost a small fortune to produce. Sadly, his life was cut short at the age of 22, but his legacy survives through a life-size statue in his hometown that reminds us of the Alton Giant. 8. The Pumpkin Capital of the World. Nestled in Tazewell County, the town of Morton serves a very specific and delicious purpose for the entire nation. It is officially recognized as the pumpkin capital of the world because it is home to a massive processing facility owned by the Libby Company. This single plant is responsible for producing over 80% of the canned pumpkin consumed in the United States. Every autumn, the surrounding fields are blanketed in vibrant orange as farmers harvest millions of pounds of the squash. The town celebrates its agricultural heritage with an annual festival that features massive parades, pumpkin weighing contests, and a variety of treats that go far beyond the standard pie. From the rich soil of the prairie to the pantry of almost every American home, Morton ensures that the flavors of the harvest season are always available, making it a cornerstone of the state's agricultural economy. And 7. The Great Political Duel. In 1858, the eyes of the entire nation were fixed on a series of 7 intense confrontations across Illinois, known as the Lincoln-Douglas debates. These were not mere campaign speeches, but intellectual battles that shaped the future of American democracy. Abraham Lincoln, a relatively unknown lawyer at the time, challenged the incumbent Senator Stephen Douglas to discuss the most pressing issue of the age, the expansion of slavery into new territories. From Freeport to Quincy, thousands of people gathered in open fields and town squares to listen for hours as the two men traded sharp arguments and witty retorts. While Lincoln ultimately lost the senatorial election, his performance during these debates propelled him onto the national stage and paved his way to the presidency 2 years later. These events solidified the reputation of the state as a crucible for the most significant political ideas in history. 6. The model town of Pullman. In the late 19th century, an industrialist named George Pullman decided to build a social experiment on the outskirts of Chicago. He created a model town designed to house the workers of his Palace Car Company, featuring beautiful brick homes, parks, and libraries. However, this utopia came with a high price, as Pullman controlled every aspect of his employees' lives, from their rent to their water usage. When an economic depression hit in 1894, Pullman lowered wages but refused to lower rents, sparking one of the most significant labor strikes in history. The conflict paralyzed the nation's railroad system and eventually required the intervention of federal troops. The strike highlighted the deep tensions between labor and capital and led to the creation of Labor Day as a national holiday. Today, the Pullman neighborhood stands as a national monument, preserving the memory of this grand and troubled social experiment. 5. The Legend of the Starved Rock. High above the Illinois River in LaSalle County sits a massive sandstone bluff with a haunting name and a tragic history. According to local lore, in the late 18th century, a group of Illiniwek people sought refuge on top of the rock after a conflict with the Ottawa and Potawatomi tribes. The location was easily defensible, but the attackers surrounded the base, cutting off all access to food and water. The trapped people faced a grim choice: surrender to their enemies or perish atop the cliff. Legend says they chose the latter, and the site became known as Starved Rock to commemorate their sacrifice. While historians debate the exact details of the event, the location remains a symbol of the ancient and often violent history of the region. Today, the area is a state park, drawing millions of visitors who marvel at the natural beauty and the somber legend. 4. The ancient metropolis of Cahokia. Long before the arrival of Europeans, a sprawling urban center flourished in the fertile bottomlands near present-day Collinsville. Known as Cahokia, this was the largest and most influential settlement of the Mississippian culture, reaching its peak around the year 1100. At its height, the city had a population of up to 20,000 people, making it larger than London was at the same time. The most striking feature of the site is Monk's Mound, a massive earthen structure that stands 100 feet tall and covers 14 acres at its base. This was the ceremonial heart of a complex society that featured advanced agriculture, astronomy, and trade networks stretching across the continent. Although the city was abandoned by the 14th century for reasons that remain a mystery, the earthen mounds remain as a silent testament to the ingenuity and power of the state's first great civilization. 3. The birth of the atomic age. Beneath the abandoned west stands of Stagg Field at the University of Chicago, a group of scientists led by Enrico Fermi achieved a feat that would change the world forever. On a cold December day in 1942, they successfully initiated the first self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction. This project, known as Chicago Pile 1, was part of the top-secret Manhattan Project during World War II. The reactor was a crude stack of graphite bricks and uranium fuel with no cooling system and only manual control rods to prevent a meltdown. When the reaction became critical, it proved that the immense power within the atom could be harnessed for both energy and weaponry. This quiet experiment in the heart of the city ushered in the atomic age, leading to advancements in medicine and power generation, while also forever altering the landscape of global politics and the nature of modern warfare. 2. The Sunday Law innovation. The sweet treat we know as the ice cream sundae has a surprising and pious origin story in the city of Evanston. During the late 19th century, the town was known as a stronghold of the temperance movement and was often referred to as Heavenston. Local blue laws were extremely strict, prohibiting the sale of soda water on Sundays because it was considered too decadent for the Sabbath. To get around this restriction, clever confectioners began serving ice cream with syrup but without the carbonated water, creating a dish that complied with the law. They originally called it a sundae, but the spelling was later changed to Sunday to avoid offending religious leaders. While other cities also claim to be the birthplace of this dessert, the Illinois connection remains a delightful example of how a bit of legal ingenuity can lead to a worldwide culinary favorite for all to enjoy. 1. The President's Final Resting Place. In the heart of Oak Ridge Cemetery in Springfield stands a magnificent granite monument that serves as the final resting place of Abraham Lincoln. Completed in 1874, the tomb is a soaring structure topped by a massive obelisk that can be seen from miles away. Inside, the 16th president rests in a burial chamber 10 feet below the floor, protected by layers of steel and concrete to prevent any future attempts at theft. The site is a place of quiet reflection, featuring bronze statues that depict Lincoln at various stages of his life and career. Visitors from around the world come to pay their respects and rub the nose of a large bronze bust of Lincoln for good luck, a tradition that has worn the metal to a bright, shiny gold. The tomb remains a powerful symbol of the enduring legacy of the man who preserved the Union and transformed the state. After watching these 33 stories about Illinois, tell us, did you know any of them? Which one did you like best? Or which one surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. Let's see how many of us share the same story. And if you think we've missed something or want to add something, we'd love to hear from you. Your feedback helps us improve each video. Also, if you noticed any pronunciation mistakes, thank you for your patience. We strive to improve with every video. And speaking of videos, there's another one playing right now, so you can continue exploring the history of our beautiful country. But before you go, don't forget to subscribe and like so we can keep learning together. See you in the next one.